Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. I've been seeing a tag going around called the Are You Like Jane Austen tag. And I figured I have some cutting to do for my book journal. Actually, I have to do the book journaling for, I think I'm doing the annotated persuasion that I read in December. So while I'm cutting those up, I will try to answer some of these questions. I'll be kind of flipping between the two views. You'll see me adjust the camera so you can see some of the cutting. It'll look kind of upside down, but thus far I've only cut some of my stuff out, and it might be an interesting way to do this particular video. I've got some views of the, let's see, of him getting her letter. If you know, you know, you've read the book. So a couple different sizes of that in by that particular artist. Excuse me. Also in the background, which is why we're kind of at an angle, is I've got a book haul video from May that is being turned into an MP4 right now, so I can post that because I tend to keep about 2 months behind apparently in my posting. Here's a different artist's rendering, actually a couple different artists rendering of the scene I just showed with the letter. So we'll see which one I decide to go with. This is in lime, and this is when she, when Anne goes to her sister Mary. And then here's the cover of the annotated persuasion. I'll be using that as a library pocket, most likely, a library card pocket. And for those who are unfamiliar with how I book journal, I make library card pockets, so this one's already been stamped, and I've got the library card that I put together using the information in the front of the book, as well as I might have actually ended up having to look up the Dewey Decimal Code and the Library of Congress code. I had to double check the front of the book to be sure of that, but I have a whole catalog of numbers and stuff that I created, so I can go and find as close as I can the actual Dewey Decimal Code and all that. I put a lot of research into that. Anyway, so I've prepped the page, or the pages. I tend to do a spread. So this is what I've got set up already. Other than that, it's blank. But I needed to, besides the fact that I kind of like having the edging, I had done something on the previous page that bled into this one, so I really needed to have the edges covered. Now, examples of something I've done for Austen in the recent past. This was my Northanger Abbey. I still need to write the review for that. But that gives you a general idea. I think I used a couple of the artists that I'm looking at using for this one. So I've got my basic page set, got some ideas cut out. So the tag is Are You Like Jane Austen? It was created by @Shelly-ish, excuse me. And I first saw this tag from Melinda. Her channel is A Web of Stories, and I will be sure to tag both her and Shelly-ish. So I'm going to angle this camera down so I can do some cutting. There's my cutting board, and I tend to use a let me move, there we go. I tend to use this cutting pen because I was using an X-Acto knife for a long time, but with my daytime fatigue, I crashed out and I woke up very lucky that I hadn't cut my face on the X-Acto knife. So I stick with this from now on. It's better for fussy cutting anyway. But I don't like the idea of possibly, you know, poking my eye out or cutting my face up. So here we go. Let me lock that down. Okay. So, I'm not sure how much I'm going to use this one. Yeah, I might not use that particular set. Let me grab a different page to cut while we're talking. Well, it's more of that same one that's a little bigger than what I want. So I might come back to these later. I may or may not use it. That takes up a lot of space that I could use. So let me, oh, you know, I want a couple other views of this wall, so let's go and do that one. This is in line. So the first question is, Jane Austen was an artist and writer. Give yourself a point if you're an artist, give yourself an extra point if you're a writer. So the idea is you score yourself on the number of points you have, and the higher the number of the points, the more like Austen you are. Now what I'm doing here, excuse me, I'm actually going to cut this like I'm going to make a library card pocket. I can always trim it later if I decide to just use the picture. But I'm going to at least cut one of these like I'm going to use this as a library card pocket. Because maybe I don't want to use the actual cover of the book. Maybe I want a scene from the book. So there we go. Okay. So in spite of what might seem apparent by the fact that I am choosing to cut out artwork, I can in fact draw. I don't do so very often in my journaling simply because it does take a fair amount of time, and I'm not a devoted artist. I do it when I feel like it. It's not my first love, which I know is very strange to both my father and my sister, who very much, that is their their favorite form of creativity is drawing, and my dad actually is a painter as well. So, but for me, I do it when I feel like it, and a lot of times for the book journaling, I don't feel like it. When I first got started, let me trim this a little bit more here. When I first got started, I was just drawing the covers of the books, and that was all I was doing for the book journaling. But eventually my style adjusted and I moved to doing more in the way of different kinds of pictures on there, making it a little bit more of a, I don't know, just a little bit more scrappy, I guess. More junk journaling? I don't know. Junk journaling doesn't quite seem right. I usually need something with a little bit of a rhyme and reason to it, but it was very much more than what I used to do, which was just, I drew the cover of the book and then had information about it. I've changed a lot in the little period of time I've been with book journaling. Yeah, I probably won't end up using this for the library card, but I'm glad I have it cut out. So let me just put that in the Ziploc bag so I don't lose it. Now I'm going to cut this other one. I think I will keep, I was going to cut out the frame, but I like having the quote here at the bottom, at least for this version of the picture. I have other ones that I can cut without that. So yes, 1 point for being an artist, and I'm also going to add a point for being a writer. I'm not a serious writer, but I do write. It's been brought up in other videos that my mom and I have been writing a shared story together for many years. Actually, I think we are coming on over 15 years of writing together. We started when I was in college, and we're still working on the same shared story that we were working on then. We will probably never finish it. But that's not why we're writing it. We're writing it just for the fun of writing. So, yes, I do write, even if it's not anywhere near an Austenian level of writing. Oh, well, that ended up being a little sloppy cut. But you know what? It's a journal. It can be sloppy if I want it to. I can always trim the edge if I choose to. But let's get rid of that. Let me get a little drink. Oh, this cutting board, by the way, is quite nice. It's holds up really well. I may have torn it to pieces here. I'm not sure what I was using, but all things considered, it holds up really well. Let me get that tea off there because I don't want to make my next paper wet. And it's was.an cutting mats, and it's one of the smaller sizes. Sorry. I think anything much bigger would be too much space. I don't have that much space, especially if I'm doing something else on this desk. All right, let me make sure that this is dry. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I think I'll do a smaller one. I'm going to kind of, the last time I cut it really close to their form. Like, I really hugged a little bit more Captain Wentworth's arm. I kind of traced him a little bit more. I think this time I'm going to do a little bit more, like an oval maybe. So you can see the wall and then the step a little bit. So, and I am just going to eyeball that. I don't feel like getting out a pencil and sketching around it. But anyway, so 2 points so far. Yes, I draw. Yes, I write like Austen. So, number 2. Austen was born to a large family. She had a total of 7 siblings, 1 sister, and 6 brothers. Give yourself a point if you have 3 or more siblings in your family. So, I do not get a point here. I only have the 1 sister. And yeah, so we are a rather smallish family, especially in comparison to what would have been the norms most likely, you know, in Austen's age. Let me get that a little trimmed closer. There we go. Okay, so it's not really a true oval, but let's see. There we go. I didn't want to cut too close to the hat and risk ruining the hat. So there we go. So no points there for me. Okay, 3. Austen did not enjoy her formal education. Give yourself a point if you did not care for school. Now, this one might be surprising, maybe for people, but I actually didn't enjoy school. I enjoyed learning. I did not enjoy school. I never could figure out a way of studying that worked for me. I used to get frustrated because I felt really stupid because I could not retain information. I loved reading books. I would always finish my reading assignments, my history book or whatever that I was reading a long time before I was supposed to. But when I would get down to studying, it just would never stick. And I had the same problem in nursing school. It turns out I am more of a hands-on learner, which honestly, the way that we are, even in a homeschooling type situation, you still have to take tests. And, oh, I'm sorry, guys. Let me take a drink. So even in a homeschooling type situation, you still have to take tests. So I just didn't do well, no matter how much I tried to study. I could never figure out a way that worked for me. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy formal education. So let me give myself a point there. I unfortunately, yeah, I wish I had enjoyed it more. But enjoyed learning, not the formal education part. So dark humor is woven, this is number 4. Dark humor is woven throughout Austen's writing. Give yourself a point if you have a grim sense of humor. You must share a dark joke in order to get this point. I'm going to pause the video simply because I need to cough again, or get some water. Okay, I'm back. So most of my dark humor would be more nursing related, because I was a nurse for 10 years. And a lot of medical humor is not terribly appropriate, simply because of the circumstances that you're in, the kind of things that you had to, those kind of circumstances in which you had to lighten the mood can be very inappropriate. Yeah, I mean, I could possibly say in work-related situation, maybe something with darker sense of humor, but nothing compares to what I had for some coworkers. I mean, really didn't have anything on them. And I mean, Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily I have a particularly, like, on my own outside the nursing environment. No, I wouldn't say I had a particularly dark sense of humor. I think I might do one cut of taking Louisa away from Captain Wentworth in the background. So I'm actually not going to give myself a point for that, for dark humor, just because I don't think that is my baseline humor. I don't, as a general rule, have much in the way of a dark humor normally since leaving the medical field. And also, I have to admit, I don't have the greatest barometer of what a normal person's sense of humor is. It's just like I don't necessarily have a very good barometer on what people find to be like, don't talk about this while I'm eating kind of thing. Like something that I wouldn't find gross, I've discovered the hard way that people do not like to talk about while they're eating, because, you know, nurses will talk about whatever while we're eating, because I mean, that's, at least that's been my experience on the job, is, you know, that's when you have a chance to sit and talk, so you will be talking about whatever. And I think that's something similar for the way humor works for me. I kind of lose track of what normal is in that way. I've gotten better since I've been out of the workforce, but yeah. But that was a whole lot of nothing to say. Yeah, I'm not giving myself a point. Number 5. Jane broke off 2 engagements and died a spinster. Give yourself a point if you're single. So I do give myself a point for that. And actually, I did break off an engagement myself. But, I mean, quite a few years ago. But yeah, so I get a point for that one. Number 6, Austen experienced low periods or spells of depression. Give yourself a point if you have struggled with mental health. Mine was situational, although it was a struggle. It was when I first started getting, well, there are 2 points. They're all kind of tied together. When I started getting sick, first of all, there was a period of time where I had to stop working in the hospital. And then when I struggled to find any place that would take me to work, because I was desperately trying to stay in the workforce. And I'll tell you what, that was one of the most depressing periods, was not being able to find anything, because you were either overqualified and people didn't want to take me because of the fact that I had the nursing education. They were convinced that I would go elsewhere, or I would know that I wouldn't be physically capable of doing, you know, something that would be in the job description. So there was that period of time. Then there was the really dark period of time where I kept getting sicker, didn't really see a light at the end of that tunnel, and ended up, you know, I ended up actually not being able to work anymore after I had my surgery. And it did get better, and that helped improve my mental health, was finding that I needed surgery, you know, actually have an explanation. But until that point, it was very dark, because physically every day was grueling. Just getting into the workplace would bring me to tears because it was so exhausting. And that wears on you mentally. And then when I had to get out, when I was out of the workforce and couldn't go back, there was that mental struggle. So yeah, to a certain extent, you could say that, yeah, I've had that in the past. It's not really been something that's remained. You know, I've kept some of the, I would say some of the lack of, it affected my trust a lot of medical professionals that would see me for my medical stuff. I would find that I became a lot more defensive because it took me a long time to get someone to believe me. So it did a number on my confidence in what I was seeing going on with myself. I was beginning to think I was like going crazy because I couldn't find anything. So yeah, that does a number on you as well, mental health wise. So had struggles in the past. I've definitely gotten over a lot of it, but almost 100% of it was related to a specific period in my life, which was when I got really sick. Okay. 7. Jane moved away from her childhood home in her 20s. Give yourself a point if you've lived away from your childhood home or region. So, I was a military brat. So it wasn't until I was 12 that I even had a so-called childhood home that was in one spot. I probably won't use this one, it's a little big. But yeah, so I'm still gonna put 0 because other than college, once I moved here, I really didn't move away from my childhood hometown. We really stayed here after my dad retired. So I think I'm going to cut out a smaller form of the cover in case I decide to go with a different library card pocket. So cut out one of these. Okay, so Jane was not vain. Give yourself a point if you have very little interest in vanity. I mean, I think we've all, maybe not we've all, but I mean, I had my period in college where I did, the whole makeup thing. I was late to that game, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't think that I have ever been particularly vain. The next one is probably more applicable to me, and I'm going to go on to that one. So I'm not going to necessarily give myself a point, or sorry, I will give myself a point for not necessarily a lot of interest in vanity, but I'm going to give myself a point also for number 9, or I'm not going to give myself a point for number 9, because hair actually is one, if I'm vain about anything, it has been hair. Now my hair is cut right now, and that's usually where I'll go wild. So I'll either cut my hair real short or have it real long. But that is, I've got, my hair is thick and, not kind of, it's that kind of convenient texture where it's, got some curl to it, but it's not like out of control usually. And so I've always liked the texture of my hair. And so that is something that I used to style it and put some actual effort into it. Now, once I got sick, it just kind of ceased to become a priority. But yeah, the hair, it definitely has been a concern for me because, yeah, it's something that I like. Okay, so Austen expressed her distaste for hot weather. Give yourself a point if you dislike the heat. Oh my gosh, do I dislike the heat. Heat is not my friend. It usually is one of the things that makes me feel particularly awful. I'm going to actually cut this along. They give me kind of what looks like it's a screen on here. So I'm going to cut along the screen, use that as kind of a framing reference for this picture. And then hug this a little bit along Captain Wentworth. Don't tear. Okay, so in a second I will be adding up my points. Let me just finish cutting around Captain Wentworth and his umbrella, and then cut around here. I do like this pen for fussy cutting, but you do have to be careful how you angle it, because if you angle it wrong, let me go a little bit more on the screen. If you angle it wrong, you will be cutting in a completely different direction that you want. Because you can see there is an actual direction to the knife. I'm not sure if that's obvious or not. But there is an actual shaping to it. So you can go the opposite. If you're not careful, you can end up going the opposite direction that you want and not be nearly as precise if you aren't paying attention, which kind of defeats the purpose of having something fussy cutting if you don't go the direction that you want to. But when you pay attention, it's actually quite a nice tool. Okay, and then let's follow the shadow line that this artist created to make our way to Captain Wentworth. Bingo. Okay, So then let's add up our score. So I had, I'm going to bring this back up again. Hi. So let's see. I had 2 for this one. So, and then I got 3. That was total. Makes me up to 3 there. 4 here. 5 here. 6 here. 7. Okay, so I am a 7, which puts me at 6 to 7. You and Austen are friends. You two could enjoy a long walk in the country and chat about all the things you have in common. And honestly, even if it was just discussing her characters, like I'm currently reading, I'm almost finished with this. I really want to finish this before July is over, because then I'll have actually been able to finish something for Jane Austen July. This year I've not been doing very well at keeping up with things, it feels like. But there's a quote that is in here, and this is what matters in Jane Austen. I read this 2021, I think, and I didn't really remember it. I'm glad I've reread it. I've tabbed it like crazy. Sometimes I feel like I'm tabbing every page, which is kind of defeating the purpose, but oh well, it's my book. And let's see. So there's a quote that she has in here that it actually matches up something I read in what Jane Austen's characters read and why, and talks about how Austen's characters, once she wrote them, they weren't just like done. This has always been my argument against Austen's characters being just like people that she picked out of her life, because I've heard people state that a lot of, that is what other authors did, and it seemed to be very common at the time. I have always personally believed it's actually to kind of diminish Austen's creativity, because her characters had a life outside of her novels for her. They weren't just set pieces. She had a very active, imaginative life, and that comes out in what Jane Austen's characters read and why, when she's talking about what Darcy would think if, Lizzie's painting was in this, museum or art gallery that Jane went to, and oh hey, there's Jane Bingley's painting. I knew she would like green. That kind of thing, where it's just like she's talking about them like they're real, which is what really creative people do when they get really immersed in their characters. But what I actually want to bring up, it actually has something to do with oh, here we go. So she's talking about how Jane Fairfax, how she thinks that she would enjoy 9 or 10 years of marital felicity before she died. So she would make up these this is how the story continues kind of things to tell her family, to continue to make these stories live on. She would say that I think Mary Bennet ended up marrying a solicitor, I think she said, in her uncle's, not in the one in Meryton, I believe, that uncle's business. And Kitty Bennet ended up with a minister. And so it's like she had these lives that these characters had, and I absolutely could see myself enjoying those conversations with her, because these are the same conversations my mom and I have about our characters, as well as characters from other people's books. So I could absolutely see Jane and Austen and I being friends and enjoying these kind of conversations. Well, that's it for this video. I did score the 6 to 7. You could argue one way or another if I, maybe I could have been down as low as a 6, but a 6 to 7 is about what I expected. So yeah, if you want to do this, consider yourself tagged. Let me know if you enjoyed just a little bit of book journaling. I know this is a little bit of something different that I don't normally do it this way. I did get some cutting done, which is what I wanted to do. So a little bit in the way of Captain Wentworth. And I'm not sure if I'll use the smaller versions of the cover or the bigger one for my library card pocket. I'll make up my mind when I get there. I really do like the artwork that came with Lime, and I could either use this one, but I do kind of like having Captain Wentworth in the background. So, and I could either do it this way where you've got the wall and the step as well, or just where it's very focused in on the characters. Or I have this where it has the quotes and the little chapter number at the bottom. So there's a lot that I can go with. I haven't made up my mind. I do think that I want to, so I already know that I have the washi tape of the roses around the edges, like there. But I also kind of think that maybe, especially if I am dealing with a letter, I have this washi tape that's meant to be like a Regency letter writing. So it's the top one. You can see the quill. You can see the stamp for like stamping the envelope shut. And I think I'm at least going to use this around the edging for one of those pictures where he's written the letter to Anne and he wants her to see it. And I kind of feel like I want that around the edging of that picture. We'll see whether or not I actually use that. That'll be a little something different than what I've done in the past for my journaling. I don't usually use washi tape outside of the edging, but it kind of seems like a waste when you have such a letter that's such an integral part to that book, that it kind of seems like a waste not to use this. So yeah, I have that waiting to try to figure out what I'm going to do with that. So that's it with this video. My other video that I had that was editing, or rather uploading, not really, saving as an MP4. I'm going to be uploading it because it just finished saving. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that. Then I'm going to see what bit of editing I need to do this one. I might just, honestly, I'm probably going to just post this as is. I'm not even sure if I'm going to do an intro to it. This is really a rough, and I think I'm going to keep it a rough one. Maybe every once in a while just do one of these rough book journaling ones if people decide they like it. So that's it for this video. Hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining me. You have a great day. God bless. Bye.